Redheaded stranger had eyes like pretty woman walking down
ancient languages. I saw a freak walking.
You're listening to Texas Tunes, the Texas-born podcast all about the top names from the Lone Star State music scene.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster, feeding the poor and helping out with their bills. Although I was born in Jamaica, now I'm in the U.S. making deals.
Hello, and welcome to Texas Tunes, the Texas-born podcast all about the top names from the Lone Star State's music scene. The intro song you just heard was Damn, It Feels Good to Be a Gangsta, a 1992 track released by the Geto Boys. I'm Dangerous, and sitting next to me for this episode is Vinyl.
That's right, Dangerous. I'm Vinyl, and this week we're going to be taking a look at Houston rapper Scarface, who got his start in the Geto Boys. Up next, we're going to play their two songs before going on too deep a dive. First up is G-Code, and next up is Mind Playing Tricks on Me. Enjoy.
We don't talk to police, we don't make a peace bond. We don't trust in the judicial system, we shoot guns. We rely on the streets, we do battle in the hood. I was born in the G-Code, embedded in my blood.
I live by the swamp. I take my boys everywhere I go because I'm paranoid. I keep looking over my shoulder and peeping around corners. My mind is playing tricks on me.
We'll be taking you on this tour down memory lane back to Houston in the 80s. You excited, Vinyl?
Yeah, I'm excited, Dangerous. This is going to be a good little look back at the career of our musician this week, Scarface. He got his start before the Geto Boys, but that's where it really came to prominence in the late 1990s. The Geto Boys were kind of the next natural step from the LA scene, straight out of Compton guys. You had your Eazy-E's, your Ice Cubes, and then you move forward, and that's where you get to the Geto Boys with Scarface. The song that we entered with a little bit earlier was Damn, It Feels Good to Be a Gangsta, which was one of their top hits. Absolutely loved it back then. It topped on, it didn't top, but it was on the Billboard Hot 100. Big moving forward step for that southern rap scene back then, for sure. But yeah, I'm excited to get into the background of it.
It's definitely a good anthem. Everybody knows that song. I mean, the group rotated members until the early 90s when they ended up with their core membership, Scarface, Bushwick Bill, and Willie D. And it was always produced by DJ Ready Red. Ironic name, perfect name, however, for the Houston rap scene. Together, the group produced their first album under their new lineup in 1989, Grip It, on that other level. It barely eked onto the Billboard Top 200, peaking at a whopping 166.
Which, I'll say, 166 for a rap album out of Houston back then, really, really high. Because Houston at that point was not the crazy rap scene. It grew into be and still has a few. Ludacris came out of there recently. Really high spot, 166.
Definitely, it probably was a hit on the Houston local stations, but as the anthem that you would see driving through Houston no matter what. But on the top 100, you got to have a big name, and they wanted big names, right, especially from LA and all the people from there.
Mm-hmm. And I think you can see them recognize the success with that song, because you see the next year, 1 year later, the group came back with their self-titled full album, The Geto Boys. And it was a little bit of a remix from that album on which Damn, It Feels Good to Be a Gangsta released. That album being Grip It, on a whole nother level. So their next album, The Geto Boys, was kind of a remixed album, which brought a lot of the songs from Grip It back, did a new touch-up on them, kind of reintroduced the album, getting it back in the water. The Geto Boys really made their name with this album. The first album wasn't as well produced, and whenever it came back, it was much bigger, and that's what really brought him into the spotlight, partially thanks to how that album was brought out by their label Def Jam America, which I think anyone who knows the rap scene from the late 90s through the early 2000s should know the name Def Jam, right? That's a huge name.
They are solely responsible for some of the biggest hits in the rap industry, especially in that time period.
Absolutely. But I think as you go on, you can hear how the Geto Boys influenced gangster rap while also taking influence. You can see the NWA influence in a lot of their beats, the way they were produced at the time. But you can also see them kind of putting their own Dirty South spin that would eventually, spin out into the full Dirty South movement that was really big at the time. You can also look a little bit back at that time period to see how those groups worked. You see that the NWA, for example, almost all of their artists went and did solo work at a different time or another, and that's where Scarface appeared, is out of the Geto Boys on his own, doing a couple albums while still with the Geto Boys to kind of make his own name.
You know, Scarface, born Brad Terrace Jordan, got to start as DJ Action, not spelled action, recording local artists in Houston. Soon after, picked up his stage name Scarface from, of course, the 1983 movie Scarface.
Great movie.
And, got him signed with Rap-A-Lot Records.
Yeah, I didn't know anything really about Rap-A-Lot Records before we had to, look into this, but I checked them out, and, like, they actually signed quite a few big names back then. Not a lot of them had the oomph to stick with crowds like Scarface. Like Scarface, many of our listeners may not have heard of him before, but if you're from around Houston, if you know the Southern rap scene, you might have heard the name. And he's really the only person from that would know.
Yeah. In 1991, he released Mr. Scarface Is Back, a solo record that received enough praise to gather an actual fan base, overshadowing that of the Geto Boys. So, he kind of, he pulled a Beyonce.
That's right,
basically,
stepping out on his own, yeah.
He stepped out on his own, and unfortunately, kind of put all of his other peeps on the background.
Yeah, Geto Boys kind of just like right on in the background whenever that happened. And I think that is really what led to that 2000, in 2000, whenever he became president of Def Jam South, which had just recently been opened, a sub-label of Def Jam America, obviously. And so it was a really good spot for him whenever he was hired on as president and coordinator.
They also signed Ludacris. In 2000, they released his album, The Last of a Dying Breed, arguably his best critically received album, kind of like the highly anticipated, many name changed Life of Pablo.
That's right, just like that, really.
The Source awarded him Best Lyricist of the Year for his work on it in 2001. He has been producing and releasing sporadically since then, and has been described as your favorite rapper's favorite rapper.
Absolutely. I think another thing, throughout this, you're going to hear a bunch of different songs listed. One of those Tupac's on, one of them's Jay-Z is on. Throughout a lot of these songs, you see his influence and different title stamps like that. After his album The Last of the Dying Breed in 2000, his other albums didn't really find as much success. The Fix in 2002, Balls in My Word in 2003, My Homies Part 2 in 2006, Made in 2007, Emeritus in 2008, and Deeply Rooted in 2015 never saw that same success that The Last of the Dying Breed had. After that, he really sort of fell off. I think that his whole sort of persona didn't resonate as deeply after that time point. The mid-2000s were a really important cultural time for that. And after the fact, it just didn't stick. But I think there are a couple songs that he released since then that could be seen as sort of a big step up, even if they weren't critically acclaimed. One was one of the last few songs Tupac ever made, Smile. It's an excellent song, and we're gonna play for a sample for you right now.
Look at me, against all odds, don't like this hard, but carry on. Living in the projects, broke with no lights on. To all the seas that follow me, protect your essence. Born with less, but you still precious. Just smell for me now.
It's been the same old thing on my block. You either working or you're slanging.
Lord, if you hear me, still.
Awakened by the sound of a siren, helicopter spotlights illuminate the crime scene. Rockefeller Records is down with us. Cash Money Millionaires is down with us. Pretty Boy Floyd, you know we down with us. Look me in my eyes.
Look in my eyes, let me see what I see.
My eyes.
Look in my eyes, let me see.
That was Look Me in the Eyes. Up next, Dangerous, we get to go to our roundtable.
All right.
Yeah, it's our favorite part of the show every week, where we just get to talk about the artist and our thoughts on the genre in general. And after Look Me in the Eyes, I have to say, I think Scarface did a great job of touching the sort of darker side of life with his rap. A lot of the artists back then weren't really into that sort of thing.
Yeah, but he also doesn't touch the transfer button to paying his child support. Because from what I learned...
Okay, I heard about this. Yeah, tell me more.
Okay, at the 2015 BET Awards, he was arrested for unpaid child support. And he wasn't arrested, as he left. He wasn't pulled over. He was arrested right after his accepting his I Am Hip Hop honor.
And that's like, they're like, the BET's like super, like, Lifetime Achievement Award, basically, right?
Basically, from what I'm reading, it says he did not specify the amount he owed to the child's mother, but he's moving forward with his touring gigs. He's coming back to Texas.
So
He's scheduled a concert back in Dallas on November 21st. Ooh, here's the statement. First and foremost, I would like to thank my supporters for their concern during my recent arrest in Atlanta. That's always a good start.
Yeah.
While we've resolved the issue, aka your lawyers told you, hey, you need to pay up so you don't get locked up again.
Yes.
While we have resolved the issue, I would like to correct some misinformation. The amount reported that was owed is inaccurate, and I had no knowledge about there being an arrest order for me, as I have traveled to Atlanta many times, with the latest trip being in September to perform at the One Music Festival. Due to the nature of this case, having a minor child involved, I will make no further comment. Okay, if you're always gone, shouldn't you know, like, you should just be a decent human being and pay your child support and not be concerned with, I wasn't told that I was going to get a warrant.
Yeah,
like, no.
I could see maybe sometimes these situations get pretty sticky, so maybe it had something to do with that. But yeah, it's a little weak, especially from a guy who's, 46 now? Like,
he's old, yeah.
I mean, he's been around the block once or twice. He knows what's up, so that's a little strange. But, like, but I'm not to totally change topics, but I think we have to remember that this is a guy who's really closely associated with juggalos. So sometimes you have to be okay with somebody missing a child support payment whenever they're jamming out at a juggalo concert. Like,
because that's mature.
Sometimes that's the most mature thing you can do, is just go and hang with some juggalos, man. Like, we saw earlier this year he performed at a juggalo concert. He's done covers of juggalo songs. And for those of you who don't know, I know I'm using the term juggalo a little loosely. Those are the self-titled name for really huge fans of the Insane Clown Posse. Which, it's a group that I think that's a group you really love or you don't. But Scarface is definitely one that loves them.
Well, I'm just reading what his acceptance speech was for his award, and his lack of planning, failing to pay his child support, or his spontaneous stuff to do with the Juggalos, I think is really interesting. His acceptance speech basically was winged. Because I hope he did not pay a speechwriter for this, because it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
He literally said, I think this is rigged.
Good start.
That's a great start. You just got a hip hop honor award, and you're gonna address everybody thinking, yeah, I think it's rigged.
Hey, you have to give him its counterculture for sure.
He said, I appreciate all the cool S word. We're gonna keep it PG.
We're NPR style here. We're gonna keep it PG.
But none of that is true. I am not an icon. I'm lying. Well, you know what? I think they should take the award back, because it's like, you should just accept for what you are. I understand the whole being humble thing, but
I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely a little bit too humble, because, like, this is a guy who, like we said earlier, worked with Tupac, and then he also worked with, like, Jay-Z. Like, a lot of people don't realize
Ludacris, that. You can't forget Ludacris.
He made Ludacris almost. Like, if you think about those sort of things, it's not like, hey, I'm super humble, I don't deserve. Like, I mean, he definitely deserved it, and it's a little bit too humble. But I will say, before we move on too far from that, let's go ahead and get a quick clip of the Jay-Z song right here.
Northwest flight to NY on the buddy pass, sitting at the exit row by the door. Got a hoopty from the Duke around the way. I had the fofo under the rug. We finna go 3 hours. I landed in the city of dreams with tall buildings.
Well, Vinyl, that wraps up this week's episode of Texas Tunes. Next week, we're gonna go east. We'll be going to Georgia as we respectfully and almost remorselessly have taken an opinion on Kanye West's quote-unquote work of art, The Life of Pablo.
Yeah, can't wait for next week. That's going to be fun. Everybody, come back next week. Stick with us. So glad to have you all listening this week. This has been Texas Tunes.